Insurance is typically not something that is exciting, but I think it's going to be exciting today because it's really not about insurance. It's about how to basically protect yourself and to analyze your policies and to learn really a lot about the insurance and kind of the behind the scenes how some of these things will really impact you, especially as laws have changed, et cetera. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Lee to kind of start the conversation. We're going to kind of pepper both Lee and Matt with questions throughout the presentation, but we'll get it started with you, Lee.
As far as a quick agenda review, we're going to start with an estate tax overview. We're going to then move into strategies for those who do not have either coverage or adequate coverage currently in place to handle the estate tax bill that is eventually coming. There will dovetail into those that have existing coverage with our premium optimization program, which is a tactical strategical management program that dives in and looks at existing programs, picks them apart, and then rebuilds them for the benefit of the family of significant wealth, the insured, to create more alpha for them and their heirs. And then finally, we're going to spend a few minutes on Conley, which just came down in early June, so about 2 months ago, from the Supreme Court, and how that affects wealth transfer and tax planning for business owners if they have a buy-sell, potentially how it can dovetail and what could be done to potentially fix that.
You know, Lee, I love that word alpha. You know, let's talk about being able to generate value from your conversations with your clients. So can we just kind of give a quick overview of what's happening on the estate tax side? I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with that, but let's give a quick overview.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea because all the ideas are going to tie back into that, and we're in a little unique window here since the TCJA happened. Matt's going to walk us through where we were, where we are, and then what the law says, most importantly, what the law says is going to happen January 1st of 2026.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. So to get to the current situation with regards to the federal estate tax, you have to go back to 2017 and the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, where the lifetime exemption, or the amount that a family or an individual can protect from their estate tax bill, doubled. Went from 5.6 per person to up to 11.1 per person, and then ongoing indexed for inflation, which takes us into today. Today, a single individual can protect $13.6 million from the estate tax. That number is doubled with proper planning for a married couple. And that current estate tax bracket, the top bracket, sits at 40%. And at this point, we're going to change gears and look at, well, what do you do if you have existing insurance? Is there anything to take a look at? And we have a pretty compelling philosophy that we call premium optimization. Now, I would encourage you, this is going to be new information, I think, for a lot of people, even if you're an insurance expert on this call, because what it is a way to tactically manage a policy to get the most efficient outcome, which is what we're looking for in our insurance portfolio. And what's interesting is this is very common in the institutional space, large organizations that banks, otherwise hedge funds that own a lot of life insurance policies. This is the way that they pay for their in-force insurance. And it's a three-step process. And the first step starts by analyzing the contract. And you've heard Lee over the last several minutes talk about contract a lot. We are obsessed with the contract. And the first step here is actually getting a copy of it, reading through it. And inside those contracts, you will find the mathematical calculations used to support the life insurance policies. Now, it would be surprising, I think, for most people to find that there's multiple ways to run these policies. You know, sometimes there's this crazy mathematical phenomenon that insurance carriers use. Greg, I think you said they're intentionally complex. If you encounter one of these things, I assure you, intentionally complex, but sometimes can afford the client or the family an additional opportunity. in that they have a contractual obligation by the insurance carrier to the client that we can take advantage of. The second thing, after we've analyzed the contract, we'll take a look at is the policy duration. Most policies that we encounter that are existing, they might be good policies, but they're designed with a level premium every year to age 121. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Most people don't live that long. And so we want to take a look at that duration and be thoughtful with it, because life insurance, permanent life insurance, the cost, even though you're paying a level premium every year, it's not level. It's actually increasing. The internal cost of a life insurance policy increases on an annual basis. Moreover, it's not linear. It doesn't just go straight up. It's actually on a curve. And then the curve is rather exponential. And so there's a disproportionate trade-off between extending the policy. So the idea, generally speaking, with the level premium strategies, hey, we're going to overpay in the early years so we can drastically underpay in those subsequent years. But does that make any sense? So we take a look at that and say, hey, for this family, for this client, for this policy, does it make sense to have it end at age 80, age 85, age 90, 105, depending on the situation? And then what are the dollars and cents associated with extending the policies? Last, we combine that information together to come up with an optimized premium. So that it's a little abstract at this point. Let's dive into an example here. This is a policy that Lee and I worked on, I believe it was the first quarter of this year. And we were brought in by the investment advisors to look at a $25 million life insurance policy. Client was now age 68. And again, policy year 17 is when we got to it. And the current plan design was paying a $530,000 level premium into the life insurance. So the client would make a gift into an irrevocable life insurance trust for $530,000. Trust turns around and pays the insurance carrier. Now, we took a look at the contract and found one of those features inside of it that we thought we could take advantage of. And we came up with our optimized premium stream. And in this case, the policy was put into place to pay for estate taxes, provide liquidity, and facilitate wealth transfer at death. So how we would measure success is IRR, the most insurance leverage that you can get. How cheaply can I buy my insurance? And we could see using our premium optimization, we were able to substantially increase that internal rate of return. Let's dive into the numbers. Now, this is a busy slide, but we're going to walk through it.
Hey, Matt, can you go back one time, just one slide?
Absolutely.
I want to make sure everybody's clear of this. So basically, if the individual died at age 80, that's where the IRR would be calculated. Is that accurate?
That is correct. If that person passes away.
If they died at 95, you'd have still a 1.4% increase in the IRR from 3.4 to 4.81. So in every situation, you are creating more wealth. And how do you do that? It's because you're giving the insurance company less money early and more later, I'm assuming. Let's look at that on the next chart.
Certainly. All right. So here's our version of an illustration. There's a few things going on. We've got the client's age, policy year, and then as you can see, the original premium. And it's worth noting that if you had called the insurance carrier and asked for an in-force illustration on the premiums required to keep this policy going, this is what you would get. $530,000 to get your $25 million benefit. That's a good trade in itself, but can we improve it? So the family is gifting that $530,000. Trust is turning around and paying the $25 million. You'll notice this is our optimized premium column. You're going to notice it's not level. It actually is increasing, very closely mirroring the internal cost curve that the policy is built on. And here's the key to the IRR is these first 4 years. We discovered that the client could hold back, or the trust could hold back that $530,000 premium turn it over to their investment managers. We call that retained capital, shown in this column, compounding at 4%, and kept it outside the policy. That is crucial to understand, because let's look at year one. If we take $530,000 and give it to the life insurance carrier and that person dies, we only have $25 million of benefit. If we hold that premium back, we now have $25.5 million, right? Every dollar that we give to the insurance carrier does not get us, in this case, an additional benefit. We don't want to give them any more money. So you can see by age 90, we've created another $9 million in this side account, compounding at 4%, in addition to their life insurance policy. If they had turned around and paid this premium sent by the insurance carrier, they wouldn't have that. They would just have $25 million. Now, there's a drawback to designing things this way. And that's I'm going to blow up a subset of those years so everyone can see it. In some years, the premium required to maintain this strategy is going to be larger than the annual gift to the trust. So what do? Let's focus on age 80. The annual gift to the trust is $530,000, but the premium due to the insurance carrier is $1 million. Well, that retained capital account will work with the investment managers to raise the difference. And so the retained capital will turn around and make that premium whole in any given year. So it definitely a really good example of what you can do with an in-force policy by simply reading the contract and looking beyond just an in-force illustration to rebuild the product from its actuarial tables.
Matt, how many times have you in your career talked to advisors for the first time, showing them this example where they've just never heard of it? This seems like it's really a very well-kept secret, except for, like you say, the folks who handle life settlements and finance these policies.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and it's rather stunning. And some of it, I think you had a very astute comment earlier in saying, "Hey, these are intentionally complex." Life insurance has gotten more complex over the last few decades. The introduction of things like shadow accounts and these highly complex mathematical equations, it takes time to adapt to this. And I would say at this juncture, this is new information every time we talk about it for most people.
And in the grid, Matt, if you just go back to the slide that you're on, the years where the premium exceeds the 529,500, the calculations on the retained capital earnings has already deducted. So those are net positive increases to the family. And there's also a deduction made for anything that needs to be sold off to handle any taxes as well. So not to get too granular, but those are net positive numbers to the family. Let's talk about maybe a simpler example. I would estimate that first example that we just ran through, or Matt ran through, and Greg had some great comments on, that would fall definitely under the category of a complex premium optimization. That might take 4 insurance geeks like Matt and I 100 hours. We may have worked on something like that. We could also do a lot of positive from a premium optimization standpoint for families, and sometimes it's only 1 or 2 of us and it's 5 hours of work, and that has to do with optimizing whole life policies. We can't optimize every permanent policy, we can't optimize every whole life policy, but whole life sometimes is pretty easy to optimize, and that's because of how, again, the contract and the contract language and what typically transpires is used inside of a whole life contract. There's 3 common uses of a dividend, which is also known as the annual credit or give back from the insurance carrier, which is a check back to the client, a premium deduction, or PUA, which is typically 99.9% of the time the option that an agent probably just checks on the application because that's what their manager told them to do when they started to brainwash them on selling whole life in their Monday morning sales meeting after pouring the whole life Kool-Aid and never really explaining to the client 3, 5, 10, 15 years later that this can all be revisited. And when we typically look at a whole life contract that was not put in place by our firm, but it comes to us from a T&E attorney or a wealth advisor asking us to look at it, that is the option that was selected, never, ever, ever to be revisited again. Those paid up additions are, yes, growing some of the death benefit and yes, growing the cash value, but can the wealth advisor grow those dollars at a quicker rate and in a better vehicle for the family? And a lot of times the answer is yes. So if we look at the premium deduction feature, and instead of, let's say, a family, we'll just use an easy example for, because we're a little bit short here on time and we want to respect everybody's time that signed up for the webinar. So we're not going to get into spreadsheets on this example. Clients paying $100,000 over time, their dividend gets up to $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 a year, and it's just rolling into the contract. We will come in and say, time out, take that dividend, reduce the premium that's required, and now have an extra $20,000 that you did not pay to the insurance company either sit in an investment account that it was going to come out of or go into an investment account with their wealth advisor. And when you look at the alpha and what's going to happen 15, 20 years from now, that makes a lot more sense. But at least knowing and checking on it is the first start. And a lot of times that just doesn't happen. So we wanted to sort of show both ends of the spectrum, and obviously,
Hey, Lee, are there any? These are two really obviously positive for the policy owner. Any kind of like, what's the risk? Are there any negatives? Any situations where you looked at these kind of optimization ideas and it just didn't work, or just not appropriate?
Great question. So yes, we cannot help every single policy and family when we look at an existing policy that may have been taken out 5 years ago or 10 years ago with an insurance company. We find a lot of strategy when we go in and we pick everything apart that it was underfunded or it didn't earn what was expected, or maybe they skipped some premiums for various reasons, not because they were optimizing. And we find that we can't help in the ways that we just showed, but we can still potentially help. And what I mean by that is we find a lot of times where the contract has been underfunded and is going to crash and burn when a client is 80, 81, which is prior to life expectancy, and may not have any health issues. So although it's not as exciting of a conversation with the advisor and the family, at least we can determine the problem earlier, because it's a lot easier to fix those contracts and make some different tweaks. We're not saving money. They're actually coming out of pocket with more money, but at least we looked at it and found the problem when they were 75, because if you find the problem a lot of times at 82 or 85, it's almost impossible to fix. So good question, and we certainly can't optimize everything, but a lot of times we can still help even within a negative finding within inside of an existing policy. We thought we would be doing the crowd a disservice if we didn't spend a few minutes on